So at this point in the panel discussion, my cameras quit. I was actually filming with two cameras, and both of them shut off. I think I was running them to AC power, and I think my power supply was corrupted or surged or something. Completely lost the footage, but I was recording audio with a third device, so I do have the rest of the interview, call it a podcast at this point. There's going to be no video, just a thumbnail that I'll pop up. It's a great discussion, well worth listening to, but unfortunately we're not going to have any more visuals past this point.
So, and this is scalable, but it's going to take a couple years, you know?
All right, let me bring this back a minute. I can get queens from you, but you've got a finite supply.
Yeah, but
so you're selling your genetics to Chris. You're basically taking a royalty on that, and he's going to make thousands of queens.
Yep.
What is it going to take for us to take those daughters and test them for VSH, and then be able to give a standardized, tested product to the consumer? Like if he's got to hire someone to do nothing but UBO tests, you've got $13 in the test, you've got salary for that person.
Yeah.
What is the premium going to have to be? Will the market support that? Is it a $75 queen? Is it a $100 queen?
I don't think it has to be that high, even if you're talking production. You know, it needs to be more than what it is now, because I think it's not profitable where they're selling them at, in my opinion. I used to sell mated queens. Now, I wasn't doing volume, but I just felt like I was selling the heart out of the watermelon for nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. The market will dictate, but the market wants it, but it's not there. They're willing to pay for it. So if it's reasonable, you're going to sell all of them. I sell virgins, for crying out loud. I can't make enough. I shipped 3,000 last year, and that's just I wasn't even satisfying a little tiny bit of demand. If you're giving open mated queens, which is what people want, the market will totally sustain it. They just want something that actually works, not snake oil.
And one of the nice things with UBO is, I mean, you can move through colonies pretty quickly. It still takes time, but you know, if I have a frame runner, I can get through 60 colonies in a day.
It's way faster than Harbaugh, I know that.
Yeah. And also, too, a lot less technically challenging than Harbaugh, because you have to open up cells, you have to have a microscope and all this kind of stuff.
We're trying to make it easier. We're trying to make it
It's way easier and way faster.
Between Haribo and UBO, I think UBO can actually go into some sort of commercial production. You know, it can work in that framework. So, Frank, what is it going to take to get a standardized, tested, large commercial supply of VSH queens?
I think there would be a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So it's working with smaller producers, like kind of local cooperative groups. And that's what we're doing with James and Matt Kobe up in Michigan. So sort of that cooperative group. I have one down in Franklinton, Louisiana. It's a bunch of beekeepers get together in eastern Louisiana, and that's all they're doing is breeding from this group. But then it's also working with the large-scale queen producers too. So it's getting them to realize that the demand is there for this breeding effort, and they're on board because they know that this is something that there's going to be demand for, but they also know that breeding programs are successful. So you look historically, the Minnesota hygienic test, the freeze-killed brood test, you know, that's been something that's been very successful in, you know, I mean, it's very hard to find non-hygienic stock, right? And you think about the benefits that that program has, their experience and the benefits that they've had with those programs, they know that this is something that is part of the future. And part of the other thing why they didn't breed for resistance was because Amatraz worked really well for a long time, but not so much anymore. So there's this big shift in beekeeping where we're in this post-Amatraz world where we need to find other ways to keep mites low, and you know, they're recognizing that Varroa is a big issue. So I think it's going to be cooperative from the biggest producers to the smallest. So meeting and then everything in between. Because the biggest thing that we need to do is get those genetics out there. So that way any open mated queen is likely mating with a resistant drone.
Absolutely.
And that's the other part of the equation too, is, you know, we know we can produce good queens and we can track those queens and everything like that too. But we really need to focus on the drones. And that's something that Bob Danko is always talking about. It's like, you can make as many queens as you want, unless they're mating with those good drones, then this is all for naught.
Yep.
And they talked about that a lot. with some of the challenges that they faced early on. So we also have to keep that drone population as part of our calculation here and how this is going to work. So more drones, the better. When we do our drone saturation zone, we have a lot of colonies, but those colonies are pumping out tons of drones. We usually put 2 frames of drone comb in, so that way they're producing thousands of drones come over mating season.
And so top down, bottom up approach. There's a problem in that I think the demand is already there, but the product is not.
Yep.
Like there is no standardized, tested VSH Queen product out there.
The only standard we have right now, and again, it's not perfect, is on John Harbaugh's website until someone suggests changes to improve it, or that at least it's a start. It's like at least it's 1.0. You can fool it with Amatraz. You can catch a low mite load colony that looks like it has VSH, but it actually doesn't. But it's a start.
I think what it's going to take is one commercial producer to get some high-grade VSH stock from a mad scientist type beekeeper, and actually do the testing and have some sort of certification, and then sell a whole bunch of queens at $75 when everybody else is selling $25 queens.
I tried to do that.
And then the market, the producers are all going to be like, wait a minute. You mean I can get 3 times?
Yeah, exactly. You're totally missing out.
I can get 3x what I've been getting.
And the buyer's going to realize that they don't have to buy another package in the spring when that $25 queen dies.
Your survival rate will go up.
That $75 queen is going to live 3 years on average. And I think that's going to become obvious once people start making that investment and seeing the reward.
Well, like Paul Landsberg, sorry, go ahead, Frank.
And that's something that we're trying to put real dollars and cents on here is, what are the economics of VSH? Because let's face it, at the end of the day, beekeeping is a business, right? You know this, you're finding this out.
Yep.
And so we have to make it, we have to put dollars and cents behind it.
Right,
and
absolutely.
so I could sit here and do some back of the envelope calculations, but that's not how economics really work. So thankfully we have some people who really know what they're talking about with economics that are going to help us, say, okay, you're going to have higher survivorship, less treatments, and things like that. So how does that turn into profitability long term? So that way you know what to expect in charging for premiums. Because if you set it too high, no one's going to buy it. Set them too low, you're undercutting yourself. So that's what we're going to try to give you the information, so that way you can understand what you need to do to charge that premium.
And I have redneck data, not economist data, but I have redneck data. Paul Landsberg was using some of my stock, and this was just, I was a VSH hoarder for a while. Whenever John taught me how to do his simplified assay, that's when I started testing. So he had some of the earlier tested stuff. Of course it's high VSH, but it keeps getting better. So that's where I wanted to preface that. But he said whenever he started using them, he has a higher winter survival rate. He has more bees that make an 8-frame average, because mine are Italianists. They're typically large clusters. You're going to have more that make an 8-frame average for almonds, or if you're splitting to make, you want brood frames. He said he makes more honey. Is that because he has less dead bees, or because he makes more? Who cares? It's money in the bank. So according to Paul, I mean, you just have to put it out there and let them try it and let them see for themselves. I'm not going to sell it. It'll sell itself if I did my job.
And I read the average queen now is living 10 months. I mean, if you can get a queen that survives to the second year, you're always going to get more honey that second year than you do the first year.
Totally. And then those are producing drones. That's the ones you want. It's economically viable. And the thing is, too, I don't know, I heard someone quote this, so I could be incorrect, Frank. I thought someone said that on average, this was with helo bees, they made a little less honey, but they're super mite resistant. Well, what if they made a little less honey, what are you spending on treatments? If you reduce that by 30, 40, 50% labor and treatment cost, I mean, we're already getting there, and we can improve on that.
So
too.
2 things that are with that is that, yes, they might, this is historic data, this is something that's changed now, is that, yes, they might make less per colony, but we have more colonies producing honey. So the net honey production from that stock is higher.
Perfect.
However, that used to be the old thinking. Well, it turns out, guess what you can do with honey production? You can breed for it.
Absolutely.
And so Garrett's been incorporating that into his stock evaluation. So, in addition to all the other things he's selecting for, is that the honey problem in VSH is solved. There's no trade-off anymore. It's something that we just wasn't selected for previously. Now that, because honey production is a lot easier to measure than VSH.
Exactly.
So,
Absolutely.
so that there's no trade-off anymore.
Exactly.
It is a lot easier to look at how many boxes are on a
Yep.
hive than it is to open 200 cells and count mites.
Nathan
and
does
proto-nymphs.
love Harbo assays.
He tricked me into doing Harbo assays 1 year.
Yeah.
He's like, come on up, man. It'll be fun. We're having barbecue.
It's great.
Free barbecue.
Yeah, I'll come up and film that.
It worked once.
Yeah.
But some people it's worked a few times on.
Yeah.
That's just because they like you, Corey.
Yeah, some people like Megan Kobe, Matt's wife, actually love Harbo assays. So you people that are crazy out there that love Harbo assays, come and visit me.
That's one of those things in life that I'm glad I did it one time. I just checked that off the list.
I
and
wrote a
move on
bull
to other
one
things.
time, but that's the last time I'm going to be right.
First and last.
And so that's what I think is really important is that, Harbo is the standard right now, and we just need to improve that. So
Agreed.
whatever that is, hopefully it's UBO that comes through, and then we also have the genetics and genomics, and then maybe there's something else that we're not even thinking about could be used as a way to measure this. And that's what we really need is multiple ways to evaluate this. So one of the drawbacks of the Harbo, while it is the standard right now, is you can't do it early in the year. You have to wait until later in the year. Then you have to make sure that hopefully that queen overwinters too. So there are drawbacks to these things. So it's something that we need to have multiple ways to measure this. So that way we can select more.
Do you think a genetic or genomic test will ever get cost effective enough?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, it is. So turns out, genomics have gone through the roof in the last 20 years, where it's gotten so stinking cheap to do this. So instead of just sequencing a small piece of DNA, it's just a little bit more. You do the whole genome. And I mean, geez.
What does that cost to do on a bee?
So to do a whole genome on Varroa, that I can speak for, at the place that we got it, sequenced that, it was $100 5 years ago.
No,
Now
it's
it's lower than that. It's like 85.
Yeah.
And it keeps getting lower and lower. And so the way that Ariane was talking about getting this test set up, that's the goal is kind of cheap. How do we make it cheap but also informative? And so I don't quote me on the price, but it will be very affordable.
The
But if
thing
I
is,
want
we have
to-
to know what to look for.
Yeah.
They're
I mean,
still
it's
working
one-
on that,
yeah.
and Ariane said some people have lost faith in it. Where it didn't work, chill out. We're trying to find many traits on complex behavioral traits. This isn't a on-off one gene. This is complex. So it's if I
Well,
quote
they're-
Ariane correctly, he can tell you for sure it's not hygienic, but it's not a hundo on the if it is or not. But he's still working on it. So more
So
to come.
there's two issues with genetic testing that I see. One is that it is testing what a bee is, not what a bee does. There may be
Behavioral
multiple
versus
ways
physiological.
that they can get to a certain behavior. So UBO Harbo tests for the results of the genetics. Genetic tests for one way, or you've got to have enough information to be able to test for multiple ways.
Right.
So you've got to have
and
a lot of
genes
knowledge.
can be turned on or off.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's
aren't
so
gonna show
true.
Can you test a queen without killing her?
Yeah, you'd test her progeny or a drone.
You should have Ariana on. He'll explain a lot about
Yeah.
how this all works.
And
'Cause,
Garrett too. Garrett is a
Yeah.
wizard. You guys are lucky to have him down there. I mean, my gosh, you want to talk about II and breeding? Talk to Garrett Dodds. He's everything that they've been working on for a long time. He's been directly involved in, and he's a master.
Yeah, when I say we, I mean Garrett.
Yeah, right.
Are you guys building a database of genetic profiles from high VSH queens?
You have to talk to Ariane and Garrett about that. They'll have a lot more detailed information about
They
that.
are. There's collaborative stuff going on. I don't know what we could say and what we can't, but that is going on.
yeah.
If there was a breeders association or something for VSH and there was a database they could tap into, then you could actually, I don't think normal beekeepers are ever going to do this, but people who are high level breeders,
Breeders.
you know, Corey would do this.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The trick is just finding the gene markers, and you know what a genome looks like.
Yeah.
You know how many genes are in a genome. That's what they're sifting through.
Yeah.
So give it a little bit. Don't
Yeah.
lose faith yet. Once they nail it, they're going to have very accurate predictive power. I believe it's not sitting in our hand just
Yeah.
yet.
I don't know that you're going to be able to apply that to commercial production. where
No.
people can get a $75 queen that
No,
is
but once the breeders are tested
certified
that
VSH.
they're using, then we know what's coming out the end of the pipe is going to have that.
Yeah, they're
without
still
question.
open mating though, so
Yeah, but it's that compounding
But the,
interest,
yeah,
man.
the
Once
higher
people are using
probability
it,
of that, yeah.
once everybody's using it, it's checkmate. Then bring in Tropy. We got a new problem to work with. But actually, I think I don't have them. But I have to think some of the stuff we're working on now is going to have at least some effect on Tropy as well. It's a brood parasite.
We'll see.
We'll see,
That's
yeah.
what we're hoping to do is send some Paul lines and Russian bees
Oh, that's awesome.
over to Asia and see how they perform.
Very
Because
cool.
that's what I did this summer was I did some hygienic tests to see if there was any association with trophy infestations, and it turns out freeze-kill brood is a really strong indicator of trophy
Oh.
levels. So hygiene is going to be part of the trophy.
So there's
yeah.
going to be, just like
So-
VSH and UBO, there's some overlap.
So yeah, so we'll have to get more data on how hygienic bees work with the trophy.
if I was a colony of bees, I would not want to be owned by a scientist. It's like,
Or me.
They're gonna murder me.
I'm the worst. I will admit, the way that I keep bees is definitely not the way that you should be keeping bees. Because
Same.
I keep bees to raise varroa mites.
Yeah.
how many
Same.
ways can I kill you?
So we typically raise a lot of varroa because when we do all these tests, we need lots
You
of
have
varroa.
to have Varroa, yeah.
But then we also, we don't really manage the colonies in a way that a commercial beekeeper, or any beekeeper would do it, because when they're part of an experiment, those are all now variable. So were these colonies fed or are those not fed? Do these have double deeps or are these single deeps? So it's like, I'll tell you how to manage varroa mites, but don't ask me.
Well, that's why I thought I was accused of being a crazy person for a long time because I wasn't treating my bees. And then I found out the USDA was doing the same thing whenever they were working on VSH, and I breathed a sigh of relief that I wasn't insane. But that is, I mentioned earlier that your IPM, or managing Varroa, is at odds directly with breeding. So if I don't have mites, I get false positives. If you're manipulating, if you're knocking mite bombs down, you're causing false positives in other colonies. Whenever you see the mite load go down like 1%, you're false positives, and your harbors, oh, look how good they are. No, that was
You're taking away
oxalic.
that mite pressure.
That was oxalic. That wasn't a genetic expression
Yeah.
of SMR VSH. So it's a give take. And I think if we have a standard that comes out, we could say, here's how you're going to get false positives. That's the only thing one thing that I wish John would have tightened up on his little thing that came out is I immediately saw the opportunity for false positives with people that are manipulating their mite loads, because you're reliant on that. Like you said, I raise Varroa. If I don't have them, it makes my job a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
So it's good that I'm testing a few buddies, queens that aren't as high, because it makes sure I've got that selection pressure on it.
And let me just be clear about something though. But we do treat colonies if we do need to, because those are just, they won't be part of the experiment. They
Yeah,
just go to
you
our
just
resource
move
yard.
them, requeen them, or whatever.
They're good bees. They just need a little help.
Yep.
So-
And that's the struggle I had, is people are like, why don't you treat them and move them? Because that's a resource you can still use.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's this is the struggle that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure it was there. I want the hard, solid data, and so I just opted to just let them do their thing.
Yeah, but anything that's in our breeding population is not treated, and it's verified.
Yep.
Zero in the brood, so we know we don't
Excellent.
need treatment.
Yep.
So, Frank, what's the future going to look like?
Less
Are
treatment.
we going to have a commercial supply of VSH bees?
Yes.
I hope so. I hope that becomes a standard, just like hygienic bees. With the freeze-kill brood test is kind of.
Is the standard going to come
It's
from...
like air conditioning on a car, right? I remember back when my parents first got their cars, they paid extra for air conditioning. Now you can't get a car without air conditioning.
And there's going to be some stubborn beakkeepers that are just going to roll the window down for a while till they figure out what they're missing out on, like my dad.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be some of the things that we just have to, realize that this is not going to be one or two queen producers that are going to set the standard. We have to get everybody involved, and it's not only the producers, but also to the people who are buying these queens. The demand has to be there for them to make it worth part of their business. So I think that supply and demand needs to be increased, and I think that we are doing a good job of that by making people aware of how Varroa are important.
We've come a long way in 10 years in
Big
terms of
time.
people understanding what hygiene is and the importance of it, and starting to realize it's worth it.
Big time. I totally agree.
So the more that we're kind of getting that messaging out, I think that people are listening. And so to me, it's going to be a cooperative effort from beekeepers from north, south, east, and west, big and small. And like Corey said, there's going to be some holdouts, but that's fine. We have to also think about set realistic expectations. These aren't going to make Varroa go away and our colony losses get down to 20% or whatever that are acceptable. No, that's not going to happen. But we're going to see, hopefully, fewer. Hopefully, it never gets worse than it was this past year. But I want that 50% to start creeping down.
It can.
It's going to take time. But hopefully we start seeing this downward trend. That's what I would love to see.
And I think we will get to under 20% losses with time. I think we will be there.
Kara, do you think UBO is scalable to service the needs of the industry?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to use, and our goal is to get it out there to as many people as possible who want to use it.
And I was talking to you briefly yesterday. You're seeing a lot of international interest in this. So
we are.
It's a worldwide problem, and worldwide people are looking for solutions. So you're talking to people in Australia, the Middle East, Europe,
UK. Yeah, we got Canadian distribution now through Dancing Bee. So these
big.
are people coming to me. I'm not seeking them out. So I think we got big things coming.
That tells you that there's demand in the market for this.
But I think you just brought up something that's really important too. This is a global phenomenon. This is not something that's restricted to the United States. Australia, they are now living with Varroa too, so it's truly a global issue. And I think that we have the chance to lead that on a global scale of developing these resistant stocks. So I think that this is something that's going to be beneficial to bees all across the world.
The market in Australia, they're like an infant right now.
Yeah,
they
learning.
just got Varroa, so they are extremely susceptible.
Yep.
And boy, they should have extremely high demand for some resistant stocks.
Yeah,
and we've been doing a program there breeding for about 3 years, even before Varroa got there.
And seeing a lot of improvements too. Yeah.
We're seeing improvements. When we first ran UBO tests, there wasn't a single colony, I think, above 50%, and now we're getting 80s. There's still a lot of lows because they really started with Varroa naive bees. It's taken a long time to build up. They're not able to import semen from resistant stock because they don't supposedly have deformed wing virus there, so they're real cautious about it. But with time, it's coming up, and we're just getting the first data back from the front lines with Varroa. And I think they had 120 colonies down in the Varroa region. 2 of them were able to keep Varroa under threshold, and they were both daughters of a high UBO.
Awesome.
So that's a real small data set, and that's the initial things coming back. But we're seeing the same thing in Italy that we saw with Corey's colonies. Breeders that have been breeding for Varroa resistance for 20 years, testing their stock and comparing it to other stock, and the UBO scores are coming high from that resistance.
Yeah,
stock.
there's clear overlap. I suspected that before we even tested, and that's been the case. And whenever we tested again, same thing. And if I'm testing derivatives, we get hits, but if they've grafted a lot of other stuff too, as you would suspect, it's a lower frequency, but it's totally there, like in Paul's operation coming out of almonds. And we'll be testing them again this spring with UBO, and then I bring them home and play with them further.
Yeah, you said like F2s, F3s are still showing some.
Well, that
UBO
was in
scores.
Arkansas. Actually, John, one of the Arkansas bee inspectors, they'd used a lot of UBO and tested a bunch of different colonies just trying to find it, and he said the only ones that paid attention to it and that they got good scores out of were F2s or F3s out of my stock.
Yeah.
Ricky Ring had bought virgins and took them down there and was spreading the gospel. I think they were skeptical until they, saw the nail-scarred hands.
Yeah,
so it is heritable.
You pull those beauties out and see that 100%.
Yeah, and also Ian Stepler sent me a message and said they did a bunch of testing up in Canada, and he said the only ones that paid attention to it were VSH lines. Now, I didn't ask Ian where those VSH lines came from or who had them, but we're seeing clear overlap. Yep.
So you mentioned one little nugget, and this is just my curiosity. So Australia is limiting bringing in outside genetics because they don't think they have deformed wing virus.
Yeah, that's surprising to me.
Well, they didn't have Varroa. Now they have Varroa. So I bet they've got deformed wing
Well,
virus.
we'll know real
Just don't know
fast.
it
You'll
yet.
see it.
But you can have deformed wing without Varroa, and so it's much more
Or
dramatic.
vice versa, Varroa without deformed
You
wing.
can have Varroa without
or
deformed
were
wing.
you? That's what you meant.
So that's something that
It's just much more likely if you've got a great vector for it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
my understanding is they've tested for it and they haven't found it.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I know there are some people who don't believe that to be the case. So.
Well, the thing is, if it's there, they're going to see it with their own eyes.
Yeah.
Because I remember before I was using VSH, I would find colonies with a percentage of the workers with deformed wing, and that's whenever I was a believer in VSH, because I was getting some Tom Glenn VSH Italians when he had the Crata with the USDA, and me being a curious person and breaking rules, I would just switch that queen out and not treat them, which is not advisable, but I wanted to see what they were capable of. And I would wait 6 weeks, whatever. I'd go back in there. Guess how many bees have deformed wing virus? 0 bees.
Yeah.
And I tell you now, go through my colonies now. If you find one with deformed wing virus, I'll give you $100 bill.
And so that's what
They
that's
haven't been
actually
treated in
really
13, 14
important,
years.
is that we definitely know that deformed wing virus, specifically deformed wing virus levels, are lower in colonies with lower
Yep.
Varroa. And it's really important, though, to say that it's specifically deformed wing and a few other viruses that are vectored by the Varroa, but there's other viruses that are independent of Varroa that are similar or higher levels in VSH. So VSH, by reducing Varroa levels, will reduce deformed wing, and specifically, but not all viruses, just to be clear about that.
And I thought, too, that, and maybe there are, and we'd have to do additional testing, but I thought that I think they were getting lower deformed wing virus by reducing Varroa load, but I think it ties in with hygiene, too. Like, if you think about it, if they can detect sick or viral infested brood, if they're throwing that out before it's typhoid Mary, spreading it all around the colony with trophallaxis, that would be a mechanical break in the viral cycle.
And that's exactly what some of the data that I'm going to talk about today actually shows. So when we've sampled VSH colonies versus just unselected commercial stock and standardized by Varroa infestation and compared virus levels, even if they had the same Varroa levels, the hygienic stocks had lower Varroa.
So that supports that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
cool.
Yeah. And that was something that Mike had to remind me about.
I'm not a crazy person.
No,
Yay.
because Mike had to remind me about that data. He goes, actually, that data set is from Varroa standardized samples. So it's like, so it's even a bigger benefit. And
That
it's
is cool.
part of the hygienic behavior, but also, too, they probably maintain lower Varroa levels for a longer time, so DWD never really
Well,
got
and that makes sense based on what we know about how hygiene works.
Yeah.
The hygienic adults are detecting unhealthy brood, and that's where we get unhealthy brood odor, right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter why they're unhealthy. We see some of the same compounds that we use in UBO are elevated in sick ant pupae. It's a way of
Hymenoptera.
communicating. Exactly. It's a way of communicating that a brood is unhealthy. And so it doesn't matter, from what we can see, it doesn't matter the cause of the unhealthiness, whether it's Varroa or viruses or something else or the combination. The sicker it is, the stronger the signal. The stronger the signal, the more likely it is to be detected.
And you won't see chalk brood again either, because I used to see chalk
I
brood
don't
as
see
well.
it.
Same thing. Once I
don't
started
see it.
using high VSH stock, I've never seen a single cell of it.
I
since then.
think part of having VSH is you also have general
Correct.
hygienic behavior.
Yep.
So all VSH colonies have hygienic behavior, but not all hygienic colonies
Or
have
VSH. Yep, absolutely.
And that was something that Bob and Marla found. a while ago.
Yep, with
And that's an issue I take with the term VSH. It's because it's so limiting to what VSH can do. Yeah, they're Varroa sensitive and that's important, but they can do so much more than that. They can also address all these other diseases.
Sure.
And so you don't want to limit them by saying they're VSH.
And this is something that we talked about is, are we measuring SMR? Are we measuring VSH?
Yeah,
And
both
so
in
what
some
exactly-
instances. Yeah.
And so when we really think about it, it's really hard. I think we might even need to think about changing VSH to maybe, which I think has been valid and it's been supported. But I think that now that we're getting more data and we're seeing a bigger picture here too, is maybe, what do we call it, like low Varroa? Or
I keep saying SMR again, but going back to Harbo's simplified assay, I think you could catch a brood effect of suppressing mite reproduction like ecdysterone. Maybe it's delaying oviposition, and you catch hygiene. You know what I mean? So that's the beauty
Let
of
me
that.
interject.
Yes.
I'm talking to someone with a master's in entomology. You've got a PhD in entomology. You've got a PhD in entomology.
Yeah. Close
Quit
enough.
screwing with the acronyms.
No, SMR is the OG. SMR is the OG.
We're going
VSH.
back.
You guys
VSH
need a
added
marketing
hygiene.
person who can explain things to the masses. Like, just call it mite-resistant bees.
And,
Yeah.
and that's what but that's what we're thinking about too, is because so when we go in and we find 0 mites in the brood, right? We're not really measuring SMR, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Directly, right?
Yep.
We are measuring that there's no varroa in the brood. But SMR is probably a part of that, but we're not really measuring. So, but we're also really not measuring VSH either, because
Mite resistance.
Yep.
Mite resistant.
Well, that's
No,
a
no,
broad.
no,
that's
that's
too
not-
broad.
Mite and
That's too
disease,
broad.
mite and disease resistant.
Yeah, it needs to say SMR, VSH, and we can tease apart those things. If you say mite resistance as a whole, you're adding the stuff we've never even pondered or thought about that's out there. You're
Yeah,
adding
just-
mite biting and
just-
grooming,
Well, the
allo
Russian
grooming,
bees,
auto
well, the Russian
grooming.
bees, for example, they have,
Yeah.
the poise will tell you 20-something ways that they keep varroa levels
Yeah.
low.
Yeah.
Yeah, Russians have social apoptosis. What that really
Yep.
means is that the larvae self-destruct. Well,
They
the pupae
die.
self-destruct.
And that's like Apis cerana. Apis
Right.
cerana is the same way.
That's
yeah.
a major
just
difference.
pick one thing and we'll brand that.
VSH.
And then not change it.
Yeah. So and that's something like, so to actually measure
Hygiene.
VSH, it's actually really tedious. So when we were when I say we, the lab, we had people sitting at observation colonies waiting for one nurse bee to open up a cell and do VSH behavior,
Yep.
and very low numbers because there's not a lot of bees in the colony actually doing VSH.
Yeah.
So it's hard to even measure VSH directly. So we're using these indirect measurements
Right.
of it.
Yeah, our lab put a paper out on that a few years ago. We found the same thing in observation hives. It's a really small group of bees doing most of the work.
But we're looking at multiple sires too, so if we increase that frequency,
Right.
and of course it's a certain age group too, so that's
Yeah.
going to limit it to some degree. But I think
What
that we can
percentage
increase
of
that.
those drones that she
I
made
know.
it with are hygienic, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We're going to get funding for
We're
that
gonna
question.
we're
for
gonna
you.
find that out.
We're
Yeah.
going to do it. Either one way or another.
Right.
Kara, do you have any closing comments? Anything you want to talk about?
What do we want to talk about? I mean, I just want people to care about hygiene. Personally, I don't care how you look at it, how you test for it. If you use UBO, if you use freeze killed, if you use Harbo,
Preferably
just do
UBO
it.
or Harbo, but
Yes, agreed. But we
But-
still do see some correlation.
and washes. There's correlation between.
And washes.
Yep.
However you're doing it, I really think that hygiene and resistance is the future. We can't, as an industry, we can't keep relying on chemicals and throwing chemicals at the problem. It's expensive. It's not sustainable. It's a constant arms race. So I just really hope people will start picking up on hygiene, and I think the demand is there. We need to catch up with the supply. The demand's going to keep increasing, and we got to catch up with the supply. So let's get some breeding programs going,
Working on it.
Frank?
big scale.
Yeah, I think that we need to think about varroa management programs, not just miticides, but also too, not just VSH. We have to get people to actually do washes and make sure that what they're doing is effective at keeping varroa levels low. Data speaks louder than just assuming things. So I think that we are seeing more people keyed into varroa, especially successful beekeepers, and it's something that can be done at scale. So it's large-scale commercial producers, but it's also anybody who has bees need to think about. Not only do you have bees, but you also have varroa. So think about your pets as your bees like pets, right? You wouldn't let your dog figure out how to get rid of ticks, right? Just
Heartworms.
They require they require interventions. And so the more that we can work on that, we can reduce the impact of varroa. It's not going to go away. It's not a fad. It's going to be here for a long time, and we're going to have to live with varroa. But if we could just reduce those impacts, I think we can make significant advances in keeping colonies healthier, fewer losses, higher honey production, and things like that. So, I think that we just need to consider honeybees and varroa as the same thing.
So, Frank, when are we going to get a roadmap or guidelines for someone with 250, 300 colonies to breed VSH and put out a standardized product and be part of an association where everybody conforms to those guidelines?
And this is something that we are kind of.
I'm not hearing a date here.
I know.
You're not gonna get-
I was hoping it was gonna be like
this is
July
good, though.
4th.
This is good. Oh, I wish we had. But the thing is, we just found this out when we were at American Honey Producers Association. We had a little stakeholder engagement meeting, And we're realizing that what we're, as scientists, looking for, we're aspiring to 0 mites in the colony, right?
Yeah.
However, some beekeepers might just want to treat less, or they might have to do less management. For them, that's a benefit. And so we really need to incorporate those things into our concept of how this is going to happen. So that way we're setting realistic expectations. That's going to be the name of my autobiography. Realistic expectations.
I like it.
Because, I want to say July 4th, we're gonna roll this out, but we want it to be something that the beekeepers have input. So we are soliciting some more of that input.
I know,
so
and I'm pushing you on this
I know.
because I'm having to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
Corey had to figure it out on his own.
I had a little help.
Yeah.
It would be really nice to have some guidelines, a starting point where, okay, if I plug these things into my operation, I can be successful. I can do this. Other people are doing this. If I do this, then I can be part of this association, and I'm going to be able to charge a premium for my product because of that.
I think this is something that we need to talk more about. Yeah, because we need more input from beekeepers and people who want to produce this at any scale.
Yeah.
But we also need to see how that science can scale to whatever we're doing. So let's keep this conversation going. This is good. I
So
love
if you're
this.
I do
interested in joining the Breeders Association for VSH, email Frank.
Yeah, Frank, what's your email address?
Duck River Honey.
No.
At Stephen Godfrey 38. No, just kidding. No, it's on the website. It's frank.rinkevich@usda.gov. This is something that we have to work. Actually, I'm gonna have to work on this next 5 years because we turned out that we're pretty good at grant writing, so we have a lot of money to
Excellent.
support this
Not
kind of
me.
stuff. And it's on paper. We have to do it. So
Let's get that association going. I think that's the way to start it.
Corey?
Count me in.
I'm voting for you for president.
Yes.
I don't know.
No,
You're the one who wants to
actually,
do
your
it.
wife is the one that should be the president.
Yeah, there you go. I'll just
she's
kiss
much better than
babies
you.
and shake hands and smile and test. Put out high producing stock.
You don't want Corey out of the apiary, honestly. We need him over there.
yeah. And that's the thing. It's just making it scalable to where I can do that. I mean, I love queen rearing. I love doing all that, but I've got to take it to where I'm selecting and breeding, and it needs all hot hands on deck and my eyes on that. So I'm working on it. I think I've got a model that's scalable, so you'll see a lot of changes in the next couple of years. So
I'm expecting change in the next couple of years. I think there's enough momentum behind this. We just need to keep it going. Get interested parties connected in one giant text chain or something.
Yep, exactly. And it's not like you can't do anything. There are Harbo assays on John's website, simplified assay, UBO's on the market. You can put your hands on it, you can try it. If you want something super simple, use Randy's model. It's making improvements, it's easy. You just got to have dish soap, water, and a mite shaker. So it's not like you can't do anything. And if people are saying they've got something, test it. And pick from the best, raise queens from that.
All right. Guys, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks for the
Pleasure.
invite.
Yeah.
I like nerding out on this stuff. And
it's fun.
Jamie doesn't want to hear about it for some reason. I don't know why. It's good to have friends.
Yes, absolutely. Beekeeper friends.
Exactly.
Thanks for inviting us. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very
appreciate it.
much.